parents run a business on the dark web. I now know why my friends are going missing. My parents always bought me the best clothes, the best toys, and they sent me to the best schools. I thought they were the greatest parents in the world. I just never could have guessed the horrifying secrets behind their fortune. My school friends loved to come over to our house. My parents always invited them. Our house was very unique. It was designed by my mom, who was an architect. When I was about 4 years old, they built a secret room in the house. Instead of busting down a wall and building an extension, my mom designed a sky bridge connecting from the top floor of our house to the top floor of the room. It looked like a long white hallway with a door at the end. There were no windows on the bridge and no windows in the room. When I was little, I didn't ask many questions, but I knew I was to never go down the white hallway. I couldn't have anyways. The door at the end of the hallway was a big metal door that was always locked. I remember when I turned 7, we had a birthday party for me. Somehow one of the kids got separated from the clan and made their way upstairs. They found themselves in the white hallway. My dad bolted like I've never seen once he knew someone was missing. He found the little girl next to the locked door. "What's that room?" she asked. "That's my office, sweetie. Come on, let's get you some cake," my dad said as he took her hand and guided her back down the stairs. I guess at that moment I realized it was weird, but still I said nothing. My parents always had packages coming in. Dad always said they were medical equipment that he kept in his office. Sometimes I saw bits and pieces of what was in them, but it was always smaller parts of something that looked as if it had to be assembled. Occasionally he'd get surgical instruments. I just never knew the terrifying things he was doing with them. "Honey, they are for my collection," he'd say. And just as there were packages coming in, there were packages going out. The packages would always be by the front door, and my dad or mom, depending on who left first, would take them on their way out. Still, I asked no questions. One day when I was about 14, my mom was out on a job site designing some house for a millionaire, and my dad, who was a surgeon, had gotten called into a work emergency. It was a Friday, and I had stayed home from school because our cat had surgery, and I was an emotional teenager and couldn't bear being away. My parents reluctantly let me stay home. Dad was watching me, but he eventually got called in. Now I was home alone. Our cat Marlo was on some substances from her surgery, and she was going all over the place. I was sitting on the couch when I realized Marlo was gone. I hopped up and started to frantically look for her. I looked everywhere, except the white hallway. Marlo slept in the white hallway a lot. Maybe it was the lighting, maybe it was the way the cool marble felt on her skin. I ran upstairs to the white hallway, and to my surprise, the door was ajar. Then it hit me. This was the first time in my life I had ever seen the door open. Marlo had to have gotten in. I checked the whole house, and the door was cracked just enough for a skinny cat to slide through. I hesitated. If I got caught, I'd just say I had to save her. She doesn't know where she's at. I walked towards the metal door. As soon as I touched the door, the temperature dropped dramatically. The metal door was like ice. I pushed through. It blew cold air directly above me. I shivered. Then the extravagant spiral staircase caught my attention. My mom had such an eye for beauty. I knew this was her design. The only place to go was down the spiral staircase. The black marble staircase stood out in a totally white and bright room. I slowly made my descent. At the end of the stairs was another door. That was when I heard, "Meow." I whipped around. Marlo was behind the staircase. "Marlo, you are going to get us in trouble. We can't be down here." I started to walk for her and then heard a noise from within the room. I froze. I turned my focus back on the room and stared at the door. I said, "Mom?" I waited. Then I heard another bang. I jumped. I guess the bang and my sudden movement scared Marlo, and she went flying up the stairs. Then I heard yet another bang. I reached for the door and it was unlocked. I guess they figured a metal bolted door was enough and it wasn't necessary to lock this one too. I pushed the cold metal door open, and that's when I found out what my parents were involved with. That's when I learned of the evil in this world. I had discovered their playroom. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. That was when I walked in. The floor and walls were disturbingly white. It was so clean it almost glittered. The walls of the cylinder room were lined with shelves and racks, each holding tools, saws, surgical instruments, and restraints. From the ceiling hung 3 big leather contraptions that took me a while to figure out. They were restraint swings. In the center was a chair that looked similar to a dentist chair. It had a surgical instrument stand positioned beside it with a sterile sheet. On the sheet were orthopedic equipment. They had lots of hooks, retractors, surgical hammers, and things that resembled pliers. They were so clean they sparkled. That's when I realized the horrifying things that these tools were used for. I looked up, and to the right of the chair I saw another metal door. Whatever that noise was, it was coming from there. By now I'm scared to death, and my brain is allowing me to understand the heaviness that I'm feeling in the room. I walked toward the metal door. I didn't want to. It was like in the scary movies where the dumb white people run toward the danger. I was the dumb white girl. As I approached the door, I realized that if I proceeded, that nothing would ever be the same again. Even at such a young age, I was aware of the magnitude of this. I pushed the door and it opened. A part of me was hoping it would be locked. I entered a small hallway. It was all clean black marble floors and walls. In the hallway I saw 6 doors, 3 on the left and 3 on the right. The doors had small windows on top. That's when I heard another bang. I whipped around, and it was the second door on my right. That's where the noise came from. I walked up to the door and took a deep breath before I could muster up the courage to stand on my tippy toes and have a peek through the window. I pressed my hands against the cold, clean marble and raised up on my toes. I reached the window with my eyes, but I saw nothing. I peered around to look for anything or anyone in the room, but I saw nothing. "Help!" A woman banged against the window so hard it vibrated my face, sending me rearing backwards onto the hard floor. Although it happened so fast, I still saw more than I had wanted to. She was Asian. Her head had been shaved, and from her right temple was thick, dried blood. When she banged with her arms only. I know this because she had no hands. Fresh stitches lined the smooth sides of where her wrists should connect to her hands. I jumped up and bolted. I ran out of the hallway and back into the white room. When I was almost to the door, I heard the metal door at the top of the steps shut. "Shoot," I said in a whisper. I looked around for a place to hide, but there was no way I would go unseen down here. Then I heard my dad talking. "No, Katie, I'm not coming back to the office today. I'll be back on Monday. Just take whatever inquiries from my upcoming surgeries and put them on my desk. I'll get back to everyone then." I turned around so fast I was spinning and ran back to the black hallway. I entered the second door on the left, and thank God it was empty. Then I heard him enter the white room. I sat in the corner with my hands wrapped around my legs and pleaded with God in the weakest whisper. Then I heard the door. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I was in full-blown fight or flight. Dad approached the Asian lady. "Knock, knock," he laughed. "You ready, Miri?" I could hear the smile in his voice. "No, please, sir. Please, I won't say anything. Please, just let me go," she screamed. It hurt my ears. Her accent was thick and full of dread. I covered my ears and kept wishing I'd wake up. But this was no dream. How long had this been going on? What would happen to me if they knew I found out about this? My whole life was turned upside down. Everything was a lie. I snapped back from my thoughts as I heard the woman's screams trickle off in the distance. He dragged her out into the white room. It felt like hours had gone by before I heard another sound. A loud sound ripped through every part of my body. Even being separated by metal doors and marble walls, I felt it. It was a sound I knew. It was a bone saw. The sound made my ears pop. I tried to shut it out, and I ended up falling asleep. Then I woke up and jumped. It was like one of those experiences where you spend the night at a friend's house, and you wake up in the middle of the night and freak out because your brain doesn't immediately process where you are. I sat there for a minute and listened. I didn't hear anything. After 30 minutes, I slowly opened the door. I peeked out the door and down the black hallway. I crept out of the room and stopped by room 2 on the right. I looked in the woman's room. She wasn't there. I approached the door that led me from the black hallway to the white one. I opened the metal door and braced myself for what was to come. I saw only Miri. Dad was nowhere to be found. I had absolutely no idea how long I had been in this place. My thoughts broke as I heard Miri moan. Her back was to me, but she was slumped over the dentist chair. Behind her was an IV stand, a large bag for a regular IV, and a smaller bag for what I assumed were antibiotics. I approached the chair with fear. As soon as I was facing Miri, I was horrified. She was semi-conscious, but also in a state I could imagine one would be after excruciating pain. And then I saw what he had done. Miri's entire right leg was gone. Thick bandages and layers of gauze were wrapped about her new stump. Dark maroon leaked from the tightly wrapped dressings. I covered my mouth in hopes of it muffling my scream. This poor lady had lost both hands and now her leg? What could anyone do to deserve this? The thought of him keeping her on antibiotics just so he could keep her alive and continue to play with her hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I bent over and started sobbing. I was in shock. I was angry. This was my dad, the man who taught me how to play soccer, the man who attended all my stupid choir concerts and brought me daisies even though everyone knew I couldn't sing, the man who would listen to old records with me and birdwatch while we drank coffee on Sunday mornings. I didn't know this man. I didn't know anything. Miri stirred. She wasn't aware I was there. She was just fighting to survive. I had to get her out. I had to go get someone to help her. I wasn't going to let her die in this cold white room. I was going to save her, even if it meant Dad going to prison. I started to run towards the metal door that led back to the spiral staircase. On one of the shelves by the door, I noticed a big green book. It hadn't been there before. It was the size of a dictionary. I grabbed the book and lowered it to my level. The outside of the book said record in all gold letters. I opened it. The front page was a list of names. Beside each name was a price, a date, and an order. There were pages and pages full, orders for organs, bones, and living people. Some people had numbers in parentheses beside their names. My guess was that these were repeat customers. I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. I had hoped Mom wasn't as involved as Dad was, but that was far from the truth. This wasn't their first ledger either. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that there was a market for these things. I looked back at Miri, who was now completely unconscious. I couldn't let my parents hack her up until she was just a torso and sell her like she was livestock. I put the book back where I had found it and started out the metal doors into the black spiral staircase. I ran the stairs as fast as I could. When I got to the top, I pressed the metal door open and gasped. "Hello, sweetie," said my dad. I looked at my mom with fear in my eyes. She nodded and with a smile across her face said, "It's time we teach you the family business, my dear."